Mark your calendars because Logan Circle's Dog Days Summer Sidewalk Sale is back for its 26th year. Saturday, August 1st, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Come shop exclusive sidewalk deals, limited time discounts, and special promotions from dozens of Logan Circle's favorite local businesses. It's free, it's fun, and every purchase supports the independent shops and restaurants that make this neighborhood so special. You can expect pop-up vendors, outdoor shopping, and a great neighborhood vibe. And of course, you gotta bring the dog because yes, it is dog-friendly. So grab your friends and family and make a whole day of it. Head to districtbridges.org for the full list of participating businesses.
Today on CityCast DC, we're going to talk about the National Guard in DC. We're going to talk about how Muriel Bowser isn't signing DC's budget. And we're going to talk about the goofy or maybe much welcomed or maybe both plans for Dulles International Airport. Plus, in a members-only fourth segment, a blistering new report on the MPD's cooked books scandal. I'm here with my CityCast colleagues Ben Brash and Emma Ubert. Today is Friday, July 31st. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
Hey, Emma.
Hey, Mike.
So let's get into it. Emma, you did two jaw-dropping stories about the National Guard in DC this week, but they're like differently jaw-dropping. So maybe we should take one at a time. The first one, was about something that's gotten some coverage elsewhere too, which is the contract that the Guard signed for housing for members of the Guard who are in DC. We did a whole episode on this. What I was struck by in this, and it will affect the rest of the conversation, I think, is what you and our colleague Alyssa Fowers pulled out is the kind of luxuriness of it. You know, I went to the site of Placemaker, the real estate company they're working with. These are like nicer apartments than I ever lived in, you know?
Yeah, they're really nice. And I mean, they probably should be for the price tag. It amounts to $292 million over up to 3 years, which that's like $4,000 a month per troop. If you're going to pay $4,000 a month in rent, or if the government's going to pay $4,000 a month in rent, that would be a nice place. But yeah, they're pre-furnished. But like, yeah, each guardsman will have their own bedroom. Like I said, it's furnished. Many of them have in-unit laundry, or at least in-building laundry. They come with Wi-Fi and a gym in the building, and they're in like pretty nice neighborhoods like DuPont Circle, or they're in up and coming and new neighborhoods like Buzzard Point. And so they're really nice.
I mean, it's like I just went and was like scrolling through the pictures like a slideshow, and I mean, I don't know what was wrong with me in my 20s. I lived in cruddy places. But so the reason I think this is relevant, and maybe I'm overthinking it, is that the Guard deployment, the politics of it, which have been fraught at times, I don't think as fraught as with ICE and things like that. But, for a lot of Washingtonians, it's pretty uncomfortable to see armed soldiers patrolling the streets of the capital of what's supposed to be a democracy. It's just, it feels like third world or whatever. But like the pushback has often been like, here are these elite, entitled, Washington insiders who are looking down on people who have been, after all, like they didn't volunteer. I mean, they didn't choose to come here. They've been assigned. They've been tasked to come here, and let them be. The idea that this task is actually like an enormously expensive one for the taxpayers of the country, and that these guys are getting something like better than a lot of Washingtonians can get. I have a feeling that's going to somehow like alter the kind of conversation around this. It's just a hunch.
I agree. I think both of these stories that I covered this week are not going to curry a bunch of public favor for the National Guard in DC. I mean, they've never been super welcome by the majority of DC residents. However, unlike ICE or some of the feds, that most DC residents are just like, we really don't like you, get out. The National Guard, there's been a little bit more of like a nuanced conversation in some ways, where I feel like it got to a point probably a couple months ago where not everyone, certainly not everyone, but there was like some discussion of like, we don't like what these people symbolize, but it's not their fault and they're fine and they're not doing anything wrong. And oh, look, they're dropping off stickers at a elementary school, or they're helping shovel snow. And I think a combination of getting put up in nicer apartments than a lot of DC residents can afford, and B, this legal claim that I'm covering in which they are shown pinning a DC resident and a U.S. veteran to the ground on her own property, are going to maybe snap some people out of the sympathy they were starting to feel for some of these guardsmen.
Right. So that's what I was going to get to, that like having reported all this on the outlay from taxpayers for these troops, who again, they weren't like, we insist on nice things, but it was acquired for them. Having done that, now there's this lawsuit from this woman you mentioned for alleged injuries she got in an altercation on her own property with the National Guard, and there's a video attached, and it's really hard to watch.
It's really hard to watch. It's striking. I just want to be clear, it's not a lawsuit yet. This is super complicated. I had to call her ACLU lawyer to like make sure that I was getting this explained to me. But basically, it's really hard to sue the federal government employees. And so basically, this woman, Anna King, has filed a legal claim, an administrative legal claim against the Idaho National Guard and the Department of Defense, asking for $3 million. And they have, I think, a 6-month period to respond. The government does. And then once the government responds, they can say, okay, they can negotiate or they can deny it. And then at that point, she can decide if she wants to sue or not. So this is kind of a step towards a potential lawsuit for Miss King. But I mean, the video is just like, when I first watched it, I was kind of speechless. It definitely is striking. There's audio to it, which there's not often to a lot of like, as a crime reporter, like a lot of like security footage and stuff, and you can hear her like screaming for help, and it's definitely really, really striking.
And this one was a combat veteran, right?
Right. So if you read through the complaint, she served in Iraq. She earned a Bronze Star, Purple Heart. She's super decorated, and she's apparently been super outspoken against the National Guard deployment in DC. She's had kind of protest signs outside her front patio. And some of the Guard members actually approached her on that front patio on that day in May 8th. And according to court records, they thought that she was a woman who a couple days before had thrown an unidentified liquid on some officers. And so they started to detain her for that. Yeah. She's not been charged with that.
Yeah, I know people can kind of get lost in officialdom, but you just see like someone in a uniform and you're like, they're official and they have all the training in the world. The National Guard members are not trained investigators, right? That is something that like local policing does. So, for like coming back to someone's house to see and to investigate, an alleged crime, no one should be like assaulted, right? But like that's not a skill set they have, is to investigate something like this. So it just kind of shows to me like the world that we're in, where all these lines are so crossed. I know they couldn't, as they say, effectuate the arrest themselves, but it just kind of shows like how crossed the wires are.
And this has been the thing that's scared me from the jump, which is you have a lot of people who are not, this is hard stuff, right? You go to someone, you're maybe accusing them of having done something, you're investigating, they're going to get their backup. Maybe they did it, maybe they didn't. But like these are situations where when someone's got a gun, like people can wind up dead. We are lucky in DC. We have a pretty well-trained police force compared to like a lot of, rinky-dink places. But even enough bad stuff happens here, and it's not Ferguson, Missouri. So like having more people with less training just sort of invites incidents like this.
Right. Speaking to some legal experts here, it seems like the order of operations was completely out of whack. I mean, besides the aggressive, violent takedown, just like the way that it happened procedurally was not the way that it's supposed to happen. You can't walk onto someone's property and say that you're detaining them for seemingly a crime that they were not charged with at the time and have not been charged with since. She has been charged with assault on law enforcement for that incident. I invite you guys to watch the videos yourself and see what you think about that. But to your point, Mike, I was reading the affidavit in DC Superior Court that was written by a DC police officer. And, you know, the National Guard had to call the DC police to actually officially arrest her because they don't have the authority to do that. And this DC police officer, like, is interviewing these guardsmen about what happened and everything. But also, like, the DC police officer writes in the report, like, they get there and she was still face down on the concrete with her hands behind her. And DC police had to turn her over to her side to not restrict her breathing, which is standard procedure for police. And, you know, the National Guard has plastic handcuffs they used, and the plastic handcuffs were on way too tight. And DC police tried to cut them off her, and they were on so tightly they couldn't. So the National Guard had to remove them, and DC police put like the real metal handcuffs on, like looser, like the way they're supposed to be. Like it just was, it seemed like when DC police showed up, at least in my reading of the affidavit, they were kind of the adults in the room, and like she was still being arrested, but they were like, these are basic procedures to make sure she doesn't get injured in the arrest.
Which she did.
Yeah,
right?
Which she did. She did. She had to have surgery on her wrist, and her wrist is still in a cast. Apparently, she had bruised ribs, a cut face, and I mean, also she's a combat veteran, and this has reinvigorated her PTSD. I mean, one detail that really stood out to me in her legal claim was that she gets so anxious when she sees uniformed guard members now that she tries to avoid public transportation. She's always at the metro stations. And at one point, she literally vomited because she was so disturbed at just the sight of a uniformed guardsman.
So, you know, I was also surprised. I mean, you did a big piece on this. Other media followed up. There was a lot of attention about this yesterday. But like, I have not heard the sort of thing that happens when there's like a big civic backlash, a police shooting incident that leads to protests, that leads to city elected officials demanding investigations and so on. Maybe it's just because it's the end of July, that DC Council is out on break or whatever. But like, Ben, I mean, you cover these people. Have you heard anything about this? Are people like, you know, taking Emma's story and making sanctimonious tweets off of it about how they're going to get to the bottom of it?
Between the activist class and the folks in the Wilson building, I haven't seen a lot of energy around her cause. I mean, usually when there's a video that really, you know, causes it to spread. But no, I haven't seen that. I was reaching out to folks in the Wilson building and, you know, got some quick responses here and there, but just to say, you know, this is a lawsuit, so now we can't comment on it. Or, you know, it has legal involvement.
When is the last time? I mean,
yeah, sure.
Sorry, like people who get on police shootings and so on, they don't let the fact that there's ongoing investigations and procedures keep them shut, nor should they. This is a thing that, like, you know, you elect people to, you know, govern your city on the premise that they're going to conduct oversight over agencies that can hurt you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've never been a politician. I don't know what it takes to stay in office. But yeah, you'd want to hear from your leaders at a moment like this.
That's weird, man. Well, so what we are hearing from our leaders about is the thing, Ben, you wrote about this week, which is the mayor of DC, Muriel Bowser. Just to bring everyone up to speed, she proposed a budget with a lot of cuts, which she said were absolutely necessary to keep the budget balanced, which DC has to do. The the DC Council restored a bunch of those cuts or undid a bunch of her cuts and used like the rainy day fund and stuff. Some controversy around this, but they are overwhelmingly for it. And the mayor can't really stop it. But she said this week, well, I'm not signing it. I'm not going to put my name on it. It'll still become law, but I'm not going to put my name. I don't want anything to do with this. It was like a real sort of a diss, like a rebuke that you guys have done this incredibly irresponsible thing. The fear in DC is like, whoa, what if Congress notices or like, what's the political like calculation here? What's council done in response? And like, what was their reaction when this happened?
Yeah. So, budget season is dead. Long live budget season. We thought it was over and here we are. It's not.
It's never over.
It's never over. So basically what we have is kind of like the end of Mayor Bowser's term. And as we approach that moment, there's a kind of changing of the guard about the way we use money in the district, that we're just getting like the earliest glimpses into it. And this kind of sets us forward to see what the future might be like. But folks, it never feels good to not have someone like be on your team. Ostensibly like everyone is on team DC. And so it doesn't feel good when, the mayor says that she doesn't approve of what you've done. Effectively, this does nothing to this budget. The budget as it was passed by the council is going to go into effect. This is just kind of a statement, and a strong one from her, that she doesn't agree with how they did it. She doesn't think it's fiscally responsible, which, sets up maybe other issues in the future for future budgets.
So for DC, for 28 years, right, since Tony Williams became mayor, they have had this refrain, we have had balanced budgets and, a AAA bond rating and all this stuff like that, where they can set sort of, whenever they are being attacked, often from the right, they can kind of pull out the responsibility card. Look at us. We are really responsible. We're much more responsible than the federal government about our budget. This is kind of the end of that, in the sense that like now there is an easy response, which is your own mayor said your budget is so irresponsible that she's not signing it. And, the leaders of governments, of city governments, pay attention to the bond market. The bond market pays attention to them. In DC, because of its like weakened state, there is also this perennial threat of congressional intervention. And there's a sense that like, well, Bowser's letter is going to trigger Congress. And I'm sort of two minds, and like people are criticizing her about that. On the one hand, it's like, so that means like here in DC, because of our weakened state, we can't air our dirty laundry. We can't like disagree strongly about things. And, that seems a little bit like wrong. I don't want to live in that kind of place. On the other hand, that's a real danger out there. And having people I didn't vote for usurp the like power of my city government seems kind of un-American to me.
Right. I mean, this is at the core of most everything that DC does. And it's that, it is not fully, truly in control of itself. And, we have people from hundreds and thousands of miles away, telling us how we should run our government despite electing folks whom we trust to do so. You're right that there is some like, airing of dirty laundry, some like, this is family business, like we'll handle it ourselves type of thing. But I mean, what is a mayor to do if she truly doesn't believe that this is a balanced budget? Right. I mean, that is completely her prerogative. She knows the city incredibly well. She has been at its highest levels for many, many years. She's a council person starting back in 2007. She's put 2 decades of her life into formal leadership in the city. And she doesn't think this is a good idea. And so, we blame politicians like for flip-flopping, and then we say it's good that they've changed their mind. But this is her saying that I don't think this is a good idea. And she's saying, I think this sets us up poorly for the future. And, only time will tell. But this is, her standing on that business, basically.
Yeah, Ben, I'm curious. Have there been any public reactions from, people more on the federal level to Bowser refusing to sign the budget so far?
Not that I've seen. I think that it would be early for any substantial comments. I think that this might be, as Mike was saying, kind of something that people would put in their back pocket and then say, well, wait a second, even your mayor agreed that this wasn't a good idea, especially because the people who are coming into power, and that is people who are more left, people who are democratic socialists, coming in, as likely the next mayor and then onto the council, those are the people with whom the Hill Republicans have a big and bigger, I should say, problem than Muriel Bowser. So this is something they can say, well, even, the last mayor with whom they might have agreed more, even she said this was a bad idea.
The people who are for, members of the council who embraced this budget, who enacted this budget, their response is going to be a pretty simple one, which is like the mayor has just articulated a point of view that was overwhelmingly rejected by voters in the recent Democratic primary. And so tough. I kind of wish that they would also say and she's wrong about the fiscal responsibility of the budget, and here's why she's wrong. Here's why it's actually responsible. That's not been a big piece of the conversation. And it'd be useful. I don't know if it would change a lot of minds in DC, because again, people in DC, like Kenyon McDuffie ran for mayor, and he made a lot of points about the irresponsibility baked into, what he said was baked into Janice Lewis George's budgeting, and that he would be more responsible. And voters looked at it and said, no. So, there's a way you can say to Bowser, tough. And that's probably enough for DC voters right now. But probably any city, but especially this one, has to play to some other audiences,
Right. This is the thing about actually being governed by the people you elect is, hey, we want this now. And this is how you should handle the budget. This is how you should handle social services. This is how you should handle my government that, I put you in charge of.
Right.
Right. And she's warning about this, impending fiscal cliff, which I'm sure a lot of people will care deeply about when it happens. But I think that it's really hard to compellingly argue, to Mike's point, we saw this in the election, for fiscal responsibility in the long term when a lot of the services that were proposed to be cut were day-to-day survival stuff for people in DC. When it comes to housing, food security, childcare, people aren't really what will this do to our revenue base in 18 months? They're am I going to have a place to live next month? Am I going to have a place to drop my kid off? Am I going to go into debt? Am I going to be evicted? Are there going to be housing vouchers? I think that the council members have worked really hard in the markups to line by line, decide what they were going to fund. And there have been all these hearings that I've sat through some and Ben sat through some where hundreds of people come and say, this is how this is going to impact me. This is and so I think it's really hard for Bowser to maybe she has a point in the long term, but that's definitely not the compelling argument when so many people in the district have lost their jobs and are struggling to make ends meet day to day.
I think at the crux here is the idea from a lot of people that the government should not be in the business of doing those things. And yet those needs are very real and present. And they're in fact even more intense because of all of the government layoffs. I need those services now more than ever. And so this is the exact wrong time to take them away. And it speaks to what our government should be doing and also the current moment. And it's a bad bit of timing, especially as we talk about our friendliness to the business community and their taxes. And then this is how we loop back to we need to find a way to make more money, which the council is going to hold a hearing on in the fall.
Did you guys watch any of Trump's thing about Dulles yesterday?
I did not, no.
I did not. I was in another press conference.
Emma and I were slacking yesterday afternoon, and it was 3:30, and she's like, I've been sitting at my computer since 7:30, and I have not eaten a single thing all day. So
it's true.
It is not a moment when you want to just check into a event you're not covering.
Let's hear what Trump has to say about Dulles.
Our colleague Jackie Pfizer did a really nice story about, I think people have probably seen the news, but Trump personally announced a huge $22 billion makeover of Dulles Airport, which is, has this amazing space age building, but is kind of a pain in the butt if you ever have to fly in or out of there. And there's a bunch of stuff wrong with it. And Trump apparently personally was very involved in a lot of the design planning, which, I'll leave it to others to decide whether this is a good use of a president's time to involve themselves in airport ideation. It's sort of a piece with a lot of his other things in DC, of a piece with it in the sense that he, Washington doesn't like to admit it, but he's kind of onto something here, right? The Dulles is annoying. The Kennedy Center was a little bit, run down. The idea of a fair on the mall is cool in theory, but then the details, right? These renderings, they build significantly onto the Eero Saarinen building in ways that make it look pretty different. So this issue of like historic preservation and what do we do with sort of iconic, like can we just like blow up iconic buildings and vistas? Like that has been a theme and will continue to be a theme. And then the money piece of it. He says no U.S. taxpayer money is going to go into it. It's $22 billion. The airlines and the Airports Authority will pay. Unclear whether that means they will pay because your ticket suddenly has a like airport fix-up surcharge on it. And when I say your ticket, I don't mean your ticket from Cincinnati to San Diego. I mean your ticket from Washington to anywhere.
Yeah, there's simply no way that not one tax dollar won't be going into this. And also just to like think about it in the larger economic sense, money offsetting other money, right? Like there's going to be a ripple effect at some point that involves a taxpayer. And that's cool. Like we do economic development all the time, like for, things of regional importance like that. That's pretty normal as far as economic development goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reminded of the whole ballroom thing where over and over again it was there's going to be no taxpayer dollars put into this. And the Washington Post came out with that report that like construction costs had ballooned to $600 million and more than half of it was taxpayer money. And like if this is a $22 billion project, like just don't even say that because it's not true. There's no chance that there's not going to be taxpayers paying for this.
I mean, it is incredible the amount of detail that apparently Trump got into. The color of the ceilings, that sort of stuff. But I have a feeling, I mean, that the fights that will follow, there will be a like, wow, everyone's tickets have gotten a lot more expensive conversation. Which again, is to Ben's point, like cities everywhere improve their airports, and they do so by charging. One way or the other, regular people pay. Maybe they pay when they buy a ticket. Maybe they pay and they're paying off a bond that's issued by the city, whatever. And it happens because having a better airport is like good for the economy of a region. People invest in it. But I do think like, is this airport, they've already announced plans to build a separate VIP terminal for like first class passengers, people who buy into private clubs. So you don't even have to walk through the regular terminal with the unwashed masses. You can go straight to the separate. This is like independent of Trump's plans. And it's, I think funded by whatever, it's a private organization that wants to make money. And you'll be separately transported to your plane. But I do think there's like, airline travel is already pretty stratified, but it's the rare place where everybody can kind of see the stratification in American society. So I think that's going to be a piece of the conversation. And then the historic thing, like given what happened with the East Wing, like I wouldn't be surprised if one day the Saarinen terminal's not there anymore. And it's like, oops, we just thought it was the easiest way to do it. I don't know this for a fact, but I just like, we're in a sort of low trust moment where, I don't know, it's going to be super interesting, and Trump's personal involvement and the emotion that comes with that, Yeah.
You guys, remember the Strait of Hormuz? Remember the war in Iran?
I remember.
Right? Like Ukraine still, we're worried about the color ceilings. Okay. No, that's cool.
And look, you guys have both covered pieces of the reflecting pool story.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, you were down there, the thing's flaking off. There's all these people who hate Trump who are there gawking, right? They're celebrating. Laha, look, he's failed. What a goofball. And then, Trump administration and its fans are like, because of this, we have to believe that this was intentional vandalism. And like, Emma, you covered the indictment of the former Olympian who was sort of, to my mind at least, preposterously accused of having been the author of the thing falling apart. But like, it's a thing because the president has personally invested his own vision in it and his own self in it, it makes it a target for his foes, and a thing where his, any attack on the reflecting pool is an attack on Trump. Similarly, any attack on the Dulles renovations will be, and I think in Trump's mind and in the minds of people who don't like him, an attack on Trump. And that's going to, that's like not a productive way to go about like airport renovating, because like sometimes things just don't work for reasons that have nothing to do with politics. And like, I just think we're in for some like wild, weird Dulles years.
Yeah. I mean, like, we already have one politicized airport, right? We have DCA, right? We have Ronald Reagan. Not like Alan Dulles was a very chill guy, as the history books will show. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like to a man with a hammer, Trump is a builder and he wants to build things. And so this is the way that he views the world. Unsure if he's ever actually swung a hammer. Fact check on that. But, like in the documentary that we all know, The West Wing, right, the president is an economist, and he views the world through the lens of an economist, right? This is like we only have ourselves to bring to situations. And so this guy wants to build stuff. And so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the arch, right? We're looking at the ballroom. I mean, this is how he thinks.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to Mike's point, are there going to be protests next time there's flight cancellations at Dulles?
Exactly.
I just do think that people lose their minds when he puts his name on things. But also, I'm so curious what first got him into Dulles. Maybe this is known, but I just feel like so much of what we hear him talk about is things he physically sees.
Yes.
Like if he could look out his window at the White House, then it's been a target. Or there's been like reporting, there's that Jonathan O'Connell piece in the Post where he was like driving through a tunnel in the Beast and was like, this looks dirty. And then the city had to like go turn the lights up. Like, it's really things he sees. Does anyone know the last time he flew out of Dulles? Like, who put this on his radar and has made
I'm so obsessed with this question.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Like, has not flown commercial for years.
No. Yeah.
And I will say, like, speaking of things he sees out his window, like this aside in the Dulles press conference is actually what we should have been talking about this whole time. He says, we're going to replace we're going to be changing all the grass in all the parks in DC.
I thought you were talking about the people movers. Yeah, no, the grass replacement is wild.
And, I have actually reported on this before. The National Park Service controls 356 properties in DC. They're all technically parks, even though some of them are just like traffic triangles where like 3 streets meet. And for years, regular DC people have been furious because like the Park Service won't even so much as mow these things. And they hate the Park Service is like by far the most popular public agency among the general American public, except in DC, where lots of people are like, I hate the Park Service. And, outsiders are like, that's an awful lot of emotion you're developing for park rangers. But so now all of a sudden they're going to redo all the grass.
I just want to say, as a child of the suburbs, they would have to move really quickly to get in the grass that they would be replacing on the mall. Like it's like the season.
Yeah.
Like they'd really have to boogie to get it like into like right now, August, September, to get that planted. I've never known the government to move that fast.
Good times.
And I also think this would be less of a slam dunk for them than like the fountains. Pretty much everyone was like, yay, the Malcolm X fountain's on again. Let's go. But the thing about replacing grass, as we've seen at Malcolm X Park, is that then you can't step on it.
Yeah.
You can't walk on it after. And so if there's like a simultaneous shutdown of every park in DC, which I'm not sure if they do it simultaneously, I don't think that would be... I don't think that would curry any favor.
Right.
I just before the people who are really into grass get on to me. The National Mall is a mix of Kentucky Blue and tall fescue. We're not talking our warm seasons, our zoysia, our Bermuda. That's all. Okay, thanks.
How do you know this?
Yeah, I once you get into your mid-30s, you just start learning about grass types. That's all.
Okay.
I listened to a podcast about gardening and college football, and that's how.
Oh, wait, the same podcast?
It's the same podcast. Yes.
Good to know.
Yeah. Hand on the dirt. Great guys.
All right. I want to give a big thank you before we go to our newest CityCast neighbors, Jennifer O, Shaka B, Keller G, Hunter S, Chris S, Madeline M, Susan G. Thank you all for your support. Today, all of these people and every other paid subscriber gets a bonus 4th roundup chat. We're going to talk about this pretty scathing report that digs into MPD's manipulation of crime statistics. If you want to be sure you always get the full episode, please become a member. Head to membership.citycast.fm and sign up. It's only $10 a month. Members get ad-free listening, exclusive members events, and an extra events newsletter each and every week. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Julia Karen, Alex Turk, and Matt Rogers. You can check out all of our excellent newsletters and reporting at dc.citycast.fm, and our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer. Music is by Alex Roldan, with additional music from Blue Lou, Rue Walker, and Philip Ayers from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed the show, next time you are waiting at Dulles, why don't you tell everyone about it? They'll need something to do. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.